Hi.
Hello there. We're in chapter 7 now of the Proclaimer's book, Advertise the King and the Kingdom, 1919 to 1941, which is the reign of Rutherford, of course. His taking over the Watchtower almost completely from Russell and quite a different personality that really made it an organization. Give him credit for that. He was a businessman. And I think we'll see that very clearly in his approach to this new work they're doing in the 1920s. It begins this way with a quote. Do you believe that the King of Glory has begun his reign? Then back to the field, O ye sons of the Most High God. Gird on your armor, be sober, be vigilant, be active, be brave. Be faithful and true witnesses for the Lord. Go forward in the fight until every vestige of Babylon lies desolate. Herald the message far and wide. The world must know that Jehovah is God and that Jesus Christ is King of kings and Lord of lords. This is the day of all days. Behold, the King reigns. You are his publicity agents. Therefore, advertise, advertise, advertise the King and his kingdom. That dramatic call to action delivered by F Rutherford at the International Convention at Cedar Point, Ohio, 1922, had a profound influence on those in attendance. The Bible students left that convention with a burning desire to advertise the kingdom. But just a few short years earlier, the prospect of serving as publicity agents of the kingdom seemed bleak indeed. F Rutherford and 7 of his associates were in prison, and their future role within the organization seemed uncertain. How were these difficulties overcome?
The new subheading is a quote. I know something about the law of the loyal. A convention was scheduled in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, January 2 to 5, 1919, during the time that Brother Rutherford and his associates were in prison. But this was no ordinary convention. It was combined with the annual meeting of the Watchtower Society on Saturday, January 4, 1919. Brother Rutherford was well aware of the significance of this meeting. That Saturday afternoon he searched for Brother Macmillan and found him at the prison tennis court. According to Macmillan, this is what happened. Rutherford said, Mac, I want to talk to you. What do you want to talk to me about? I want to talk to you about what's going on at Pittsburgh. I'd like to play this tournament out here. Aren't you interested in what's going on? Don't you know it's the election of officers today? You might be ignored and dropped, and we'll stay here forever. Brother Rutherford, I said, let me tell you something perhaps you haven't thought of. This is the first time since the society was incorporated that it can become clearly evident whom Jehovah God would like to have as president. What do you mean by that? I mean that Brother Russell had a controlling vote, and he appointed the different officers. Now, with us seemingly out of commission, the matter's different. And if we got out in time to go up to that assembly, to that business meeting, we would come in there and would be accepted to take Brother Russell's place with the same honor he received. It might look then like man's work, not God's. Rutherford just looked thoughtful and walked away.
That day, a tense meeting was in progress back in Pittsburgh. Confusion, dissension, and arguments reigned for a while, recalled Sarah C. Kalin, who was raised in the Pittsburgh area. Some wanted to postpone the meeting for 6 months. Others questioned the legality of electing officers who were in prison. Others suggested all new officers. After a lengthy discussion, W. F. Hudgings, a director of the People's Pulpit Association, read to the audience a letter from Brother Rutherford. In it he sent love and greetings to those assembled. Satan's chief weapons are pride, ambition, and fear, he warned. Showing a desire to submit to Jehovah's will, he even humbly suggested suitable men in the event that the shareholders should decide to elect new officers for the society. Discussion continued for a while longer, and then E.D. Sexton, who had been appointed chairman of a nominating committee, spoke up, saying, I just arrived. My train was 48 hours late, having been snowbound. I have something to say, and for my own comfort I better say it now. My dear brethren, I have come here, as the balance of you have, with certain ideas in mind, pro and con. There's no legal obstacle in the way. If we desire to re-elect our brethren in the South to any office they can hold, I cannot see or find from any legal advice I have received how this will, in any shape or form, interfere with the aspect of their case before the federal court or before the public.
I believe that the greatest compliment we can pay to our dear brother Rutherford would be to re-elect him as president of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. I do not think there is any question in the mind of the public as to where we stand on the proposition. If our brethren in any way technically violated a law they did not understand, we know their motives are good, and before Almighty God they have neither violated any law of God or of man. We would manifest the greatest confidence if we re-elected Brother Rutherford as president of the association. I am not a lawyer, but when it comes to the legality of the situation, I know something about the law of the loyal. Loyalty is what God demands. I cannot imagine any greater confidence we could manifest than to have an election and re-elect Brother Rutherford as president.
That's all in capitals. We should know.
Oh, yeah, the re-elect him. Well, Brother Sexton evidently expressed the sentiments of most of those in attendance. There were nominations, a vote was taken, and J.F. Rutherford was elected president. C.A. Wise, vice president, and W.E. Van Amberg, secretary-treasurer. The next day, Brother Rutherford knocked on Macmillan's cell wall and said, "Poke your hand out." He then handed Macmillan a telegram saying that Rutherford had been re-elected president. He was very happy, Macmillan later recalled, to see this display of assurance that Jehovah was running the society. The election was over, but Brother Rutherford and the 7 others were still in prison.
What was your bottom line reaction when you first read this?
This proves nothing. They're saying it's a proof that God is behind it. No, how does that prove that?
Loyalty is what God demands. Loyalty to whom?
Yeah, to him, not to Rutherford. That just proves they're loyal to Rutherford.
And then there's the procedure here. I couldn't help be struck as we were by the title, Advertise the King and the Kingdom. Mm-hmm. This business model, where is president in the Bible?
Yeah.
Is the word president biblical? We've already talked in prior videos about theocracy is a word that's not in the Bible. Organization is a word that's not in the Bible. This is the business model. It's a democratic corporate procedure that's going on here.
I mean, it's a corporation.
It is.
So it is a business. It's been created as a business. It has nothing to do with Jehovah's backing.
And where is Macmillan when the conversation starts?
That made me laugh. I thought, okay, this is a glimpse of persecution in prison. He's in a tennis court.
Waiting for a tournament?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you really want people to think about that a lot?
Yeah, I know. I don't know why. They put this in another one, too, of the histories.
Yeah.
Because I knew that they had, spent their time in tennis. This is real persecution.
This is prophesied in the book of Revelation, right? This is the witnesses being tested by the beast. I think, though, the focus for me is on those first 2 paragraphs. It's interesting the way they frame this chapter. They start in 1922 and then move back to 1919. What's happening in 22 at the Cedar Point Convention? This famous passage, and I think some of us, if we're witnesses, have this memorized, certainly the last line there for Advertise.
I remember lots of talk where they talk about the Cedar Point conventions.
But look at the verbiage. You are his publicity agents, therefore advertise. Advertise. Well, again the business model.
Speak. Yeah.
This is corporate speak.
It's not New Testament language.
We remember that Bernays, and we've done a video on Bernays, one of Sigmund Freud's relatives, was getting modern advertising going at this very moment that Rutherford comes out of prison and does this.
Yeah.
And yes, that's the great strength of the Watchtower over the decades. Not so much Rutherford, although he initiated it, but Nathan Noer.
But
They have a business model of how to run a religion.
And what do they advertise? Really, they advertise themselves. They still do that. So now they've got jw.org. It's corporate. It's still focused on them.
What were
it's now a label.
It is, yeah, that's right.
It's
a brand now. It's more obvious than ever. But when Rutherford said this in 1922, what were the tools they were using to advertise?
The Finnish Mystery, which advertised Russell. Millions, the Millions campaign, which advertised a date.
And Rutherford's name was on it.
Yeah. And the Harp of God, which also was commending what they did for that date.
And they would be embarrassed by all these tools today. Yeah. And I think there's another aspect of this. What are they witnesses about? In the middle of that famous quote, there's "Be faithful and true witnesses for the Lord." Well, you just said they're actually advertising Russell and Rutherford and their thoughts. But then there's this first sentence: "Do you believe that the King of Glory has begun to reign?" What did they believe back then, and what did they continue to believe?
It wasn't 1914 that they thought he began.
No. It was 1874, invisible presence. In 1878, he took the throne in heaven.
Yeah.
So what's got to do with the King of Glory? You realize in the Bible that phrase, King of Glory, is a reference to God's visible manifestation.
And all these tools that they were using at the time, they stopped having them in print after the 20s. So they didn't think of it as good publicity because it was now an embarrassment. Although, they would still throw out the names of these things, and they still do. And then people have this vague idea that this was some great campaign in the past.
You are his publicity agents. Well, if you're referring to the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, you're not his publicity agents. You're pushing an organizational concept that was really, it was mass managed by Rutherford. It wasn't even Russell's concept, although he was the initial push. He was the person you were pushing at first as the FDS. But the biblical language is not organizational. It is not publicity agents and advertising. It is ambassadors. The true representatives of Jesus Christ are ambassadors, Paul says. And they should think of themselves that way, as standing in for Christ. And this message is not the gospel message.
You wanted to say, too, that it started with, do you believe the King of Glory has begun his reign? What the word glory actually means. Yeah,
this idea in the Bible, both in the New Testament and the Old, is the idea of God's theophany. That one day God will personally show up. Zechariah 14, his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives. Every eye will see him in the New Testament. This is all Old Testament. This is how God will prove that he is the King of Kings. So, it's so ironic that they use it in the context of an 1874 invisible presence and an 1878 invisible kingdom.
Yeah.
And, of course, that's all gone now. Yeah. So, yes, they'd have every right to be embarrassed about what they were using for tools back then, because they continued to say this stuff right into the 1930s and 40s.
So we're going to link to Ray France on In Search of Christian Freedom, where he talks about lips in check, exclamation mark. JW's lied to about mystery, Millions, and 1925. So those three publications really are
misrepresented in modern literature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Good. See you next time.